The quarantine tank, he swore, was closed to visitors. The calendar square arrived at 6:11 p.m., neat as a tide table. Donor walk through, city aquarium late. 2 minutes later, Marco texted, "Don't wait up. Vet team wants a quick look at the new quarantine system. Proud of me." Read he spends the heart when the rest of the sentence wants immunity. I turned the flame beneath the rice to the kind of simmer that calls itself maturity and looked out toward the waterfront. The aquarium's blue-lit glass curved over the promenade like a wave paused mid-confession. The square on my phone pulsed once and then behaved. I rinsed an already clean spoon because sometimes the only honest verb available is unnecessary. At 6:34 my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize and a message that recognized me anyway. If donors are in the Coral Gallery, why did he just badge the quarantine wing? Staff door off the service alley. Latch sticks, lift, then push. I can stall night sweep 2 minutes. Signed with a single letter, N, as if the alphabet had leaned against a hatch and promised to keep it quiet. Nisha runs nights with the calm of a person the pumps have chosen to respect. She and Marco trade competence in a dialect of water chemistry and public expectations. She and I have shared 2 cigarettes beside the ozone scrubber, and 1 laugh under a salt-stained light where a gull decided the sign for no feeding was a suggestion. We have not touched. I remember not touching more clearly than most men remember vows. "Why tell me?" I wrote. "Because your calendar is polite and my flow meters aren't," she sent back. Because he looked up before he swiped. People only look up at that door when they want oxygen. Because quarantine is closed the way champagne is hydration. The service alley smelled like brine teaching concrete about humility. I lifted, then pushed, and the latch remembered its job. Inside, the corridor was painted the color of compliance. Behind a sheet of plastic strips, the quarantine wing exhaled a clean machine breath. Ozone, salt water, the faint iodine of purpose. Tanks lined the walls like unwavering eyes. The life support room hummed a low forgiveness that ate its own echo. Marco stood between 2 round tanks with his jacket off and his shirt open, 1 button past credible. A paper visitor's cap folded into his back pocket for plausible deniability. Opposite him, resting 2 fingers on the tank rim with the practiced ownership of men who have signed a numbing wall, was Soren Lind, developer, donor, a rumor with a marina. Soren's hand hovered near Marco's wrist without landing. Because proximity photographs better than contact when your brand buys conservation and invoices discretion. "Closed to visitors looks chatty," I said from the threshold. Marco turned. For a beat, truth used his face like a viewing window. Then the public version came home from wherever it keeps its tie. "Eli," he said, how did?" "Nisha likes nouns," I said. "I like doors." Soren smiled in the fluid tone of men accustomed to watching currents do their bidding. "We were discussing acclimation," he said. "Delicate species require time to adjust." "I prefer adjustments that don't require lighting cues," I said. Marco took 1 step toward me and gave the second back to the wet floor. "We were reviewing the new intake," he said. He wanted to see the skimmers up close. "Up close is persuasive," Soren said. He lifted his palms in a universal parenthesis. 2 minutes. The water is patient, I'm not." He drifted toward the life support room where a row of protein skimmers whispered their froth into a collection cup like monks who enjoyed their work. As he passed, 2 fingers touched Marco's shoulder. Punctuation, not possession. The surface of the tank did not bother to ripple. Marco watched me the way men watch whether they hope today will forgive. "I was going to text you," he said, lower now, using the register he keeps for mornings and the soft under my jaw. "After. I wanted to know I could leave this room without it rehearsing me. You wanted to be caught, I said. Not punished, caught. He let out a breath, and the tank beside him accepted it like a tithe. Yes. There is a temperature at which grammar retires. I crossed the rubber mat and put my mouth on his because machines, at least, are honest. He kissed back with the relief of a man who has been paying interest on restraint. He tasted like donor gin and clean salt. My thumb found the hinge of his jaw and pressed. He made the small involuntary sound I keep receipts for. His palm slid under my shirt and laid itself between my shoulder blades like a promise that does not ask for applause. We didn't undress. The cameras sleep light and the pumps prefer to supervise. He broke the kiss first because he knows the exact second heat applies for narrative. He leaned his forehead against mine. A skimmer burped at the edge of our hearing as if to approve. I didn't kiss him, he said. I wanted to want to. I texted Nisha. You did, I said. She prefers oxygen to salvage. From the doorway to the life support room, Soren tilted his head with the efficient curiosity of a man who always knows where the intake is. He did not approach. Pumps spun, indifferent to hierarchy. Come home, Marco said. After I thanked the engineer who believes in nouns, I said. Nisha waited by a rack of test kits, hands in her pockets, eyes the exact color of water that has decided to behave. She didn't smile. She also didn't make mercy expensive. Sweep hits this corridor in 90, she said. If you don't want to introduce yourselves to a clipboard, go through necropsy, hang a left past the freezers, exit at the hose yard. The hose camera believes in hoses. You sent the message, I said. I opened a door, she said. You two remembered how to walk. We slipped through necropsy, bright, stainless, scrupulously indifferent, and out into the hose yard where coils of blue lay like domesticated serpents. The night had decided to be obedient. We walked home along the promenade while the aquarium pretended to be a planet. In the kitchen, the rice forgave me for treating it like a suggestion. We ate standing like mammals who know where the bowls live. He told me Soren had been sculpting a compliment into a proposition for a month, and he had helped because selection feels like love when usefulness has emptied your pockets. I told him Nisha had texted, because some people choose air over alibi. He didn't ask whether Nisha and I had ever been unprofessional together. I didn't tell him the exact way halogen makes her mouth look like a boundary I could live inside. We didn't fight. There was no theater left to sell. Later, in bed, we left a sliver of cool like a reservation and let it surrender because the night had spent too much of our restraint already. He kissed me with the steadiness I trust more than policy. I put my mouth where his jaw goes humble and told it a morning we could afford. It was heat without witnesses. The building minded its radiators. The aquarium across the water held its breath around its animals and politely forgot our names. He fell asleep with his hand on my wrist, not as proof, not as claim, just counting the animal we've decided to keep. Morning behaved. Coffee made its case. Sunlight placed small squares of permission on the table. The calendar square for tonight stayed blank, which in this city is the kink we can afford. Marco tied a tie over a throat I intend to retire with patience and kissed me like the door already knew our names. He left to teach a donor breakfast why stable is not the same as still. At 9:12, a text arrived from a number saved under one letter. No quarantine cams saw anything but foam. I looped a backflush cycle for 20. Consider it training. In I sent, you're very proud of your training. She replied, I'm proud of your exit. No punctuation correct. By noon, a society page posted a photo of Soren in a linen suit beside the touch pool with a caption about stewardship and wonder. I scrolled past. It wasn't our room. At 1, 31 Marco texted a picture of our kitchen table with the plant we keep refusing to let die basking in a rectangle of honest sun. Room exists, he wrote. The week pretended to be well-filtered. Soren sent a revised pledge with fewer adjectives and more commas. Marco read to the part where the commas started behaving like a harness and set it face down. He pressed his forehead to my temple for a quiet 7 count, and we let the air return to its own job. 2 nights later, the aquarium hosted a nocturnal open, honest tickets, real families, children holding flashlights like permissions. We went together, because sometimes the correct grammar is plural. Nisha nodded once from the back of house door like an usher who had already taken sides. Soren shook Marco's hand while a photographer taught jellyfish how to pretend to be applause. A reporter asked about legacy. Marco pointed toward a volunteer crouched beside a toddler, showing her how to touch a starfish with 2 fingers, and said, "Legacy is what keeps rooms gentle," and the reporter wrote it down like she'd earned a truth. After, we walked the long way along the pier where the wind rehearsed indifference. He slid 2 fingers into my back pocket in the way that says not mine but here, and the night decided to respect it. We burned dinner and ate it anyway. At the bedroom door, he kissed me the way good sentences land, without ornament, unavoidable. I answered as if verbs were the last honest currency. It did not stay tidy. An anonymous account posted a grainy still from a service camera, 2 silhouettes by a round tank, one with a hand too near to be polite. The caption invented entanglement, the comments rented outrage and billed per breath. I put my phone down beside the plant and watched the plant win. Marco texted a different image. The quarantine room at noon, Nisha teaching a grad student how to read a refractometer while a pump confessed contentment. "Our version works for a living," he wrote. On Sunday, Nisha texted, "Filters quiet. Want to sit where nobody sells you a seat?" We went. She poured us paper cups of coffee that tasted like competence and showed us where the UV fails first, why you never trust a valve that apologizes, and how to listen for the tiny throat-clearing a pump makes before it tells the truth. She didn't flirt with anything, not even the truth. She stood with her hands in her jacket pockets and told us a joke about rich men who think salinity is a metaphor. I liked her better for refusing to be necessary when she didn't have to be. The following week, a press conference announced a new outreach program, more sincerity than budget. Marco spoke first, about bolts and volunteers and the joy of maintenance, the only speech that ages correctly. Soren promised to help the city meet the ocean on time, a sentence that managed to spend nothing and still draw applause. After, he shook Marco's hand and then looked at me with the careful respect of a man evaluating whether he cannot purchase. "You're both very good at exits," he said. "Practice," I said. He laughed because it was the one honest thing left in his pocket. A columnist with a talent for adjectives implied Marco's influence flowed from private tour. The piece included a photo of tanks that could have been any tanks and a paragraph that could have been any rumor. The comments did their choreography. I took the plant to the sink and let the water speak to its roots like a promise we could afford. That evening, we turned our phones face down and cooked like people who believe in heat. On a wet Thursday, Nisha sent a single word, weather, and we met her at the hose yard where the rain mispronounced the drains. She showed us which great floods first, why no decent person trusts a gasket that apologizes, and where to stand when thunder negotiates with flagpoles. She did not ask about the photo. We did not say her name out loud. 3 people wide beneath a corrugated awning, we let the storm do the talking. Life kept not being simple. Soren kept sending commas that wanted homes. Marco kept returning them with better ones. The plant kept inventing a shade of green that made vanity look like a hobby. We kept our calendar squares blank on purpose because blanks are the only promises rooms respect. Sometimes, near midnight, we walk past the aquarium. Through the public glass you can't see the quarantine wing, only the galleries practicing wonder for the daylight. That's as it should be. We circle the block and go home without letting the building perform at us. He takes my wrist like a man reteaching himself the grammar of doors. I think about the tank and the 2 minutes that were enough, about how some rooms try to own you and others teach you to leave correctly. Sometimes I think about Soren paused in the stainless light like a man who wants to buy air and discovering it does not invoice. Sometimes I think about Nietzsche's line, "I opened a door," and how it's the only biography I want for this version of us. Tonight's square is empty. We're leaving it that way. Let the aquarium keep its speeches and the city its applause. We have the hose yard gate, a plant we refuse to let die, and the quiet grammar of a decision that knows where it belongs. Not in the rumor, not in the photo, but in the mouth that learned to say come home and mean it. If we get caught again, let it be by each other. The rest of the world can rehearse stewardship. We'll be in the room that doesn't need it, counting breaths until they sound like tide, and calling that enough.